The air around the Thorne estate parties always felt thick, not with humidity, though it was a warm summer evening, but with money, with expectation. And tonight, for me anyway, it felt thick with dread. I was there, Catherine Evans, in a dress I'd picked carefully, periwinkle blue, not the fiery red the original villainess might have chosen, trying to blend in, trying to be utterly, boringly agreeable. That was the whole point, wasn't it? To not be her, to not end up dead. Liam Thorne was across the lawn, under one of those enormous, ancient oak trees, talking to a cluster of older men in expensive suits. Business, you know. He looked good, exactly as the book described. Tall, dark hair that fell just so, power radiating off him like heat. My ticket out of this mess. My thigh-cling, as I'd mentally dubbed it, quite crassly. To be honest, it felt a little dirty, thinking of him like that, reduced to a lifeline. But then, I was reduced to a caricature myself. I took a slow sip of my champagne, watching him. He laughed at something one of the men said, a genuine, easy laugh that actually gave me a small jolt of, what, relief? Hope? Maybe this wasn't so terrible after all. Maybe I could do this. Change things. Then he turned, just a slight shift of his shoulders, and his eyes, a startling blue, found mine across the expanse of manicured lawn just for a split second. A moment. He offered a small, polite smile, and then he tilted his head back slightly to the men, and the words came out. Clear as day, even over the murmur of the crowd, as if he were standing next to me. Such admirable dedication to one's destiny, wouldn't you agree? It was so quick, just one beat, one sentence, like a stone dropped into calm water. The men chuckled, and Liam smoothly transitioned into another topic about the upcoming charity auction. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that line. I knew it. It was from Chapter 3, word for word, spoken by him about the original Catherine. It wasn't praise in the book. It was dismissive, derisive, a knife disguised as a compliment. And then, just like that, it was gone. He moved on. Everyone else moved on. No one blinked. For a second there, a quick, almost subliminal flicker at the very edge of my vision, I thought I saw something. A fleeting glimpse of what looked like bright blue text, like lines of code almost, streaking across the air before vanishing. I blinked hard, squeezing my eyes shut for a moment. Fatigue, I told myself, definitely just tired. Too much champagne, maybe, even if it's only one glass. I took another long, slow breath, convincing myself it was nothing. Just a trick of the light, the champagne, my own paranoia. The whole situation was overwhelming after all. I opened my eyes, forced a smile, and resumed my careful observation of the party, continuing to calculate my next move, my next carefully chosen interaction. Liam was my goal. His protection was my shield. I had to focus. I pushed the moment away. It was nothing. Later, I was still at the party, doing my rounds, making sure I was seen, but not too seen. Not like the old Catherine. I was chatting with Mrs. Henderson, a sweet, gossipy old lady, when it happened again. She was talking about her prize-winning roses, droning on about soil and pruning. I smiled, nodded, trying to appear engaged. Then her eyes seemed to glaze over for a second. Her voice flattened, almost metallic. "Oh, the roses," she said, her mouth still smiling, but her eyes, they were just empty, like windows to an empty room. "Oh, the roses," she said. Her eyes snapped back to mine, bright and warm again. "Anyway, dear, about those new hybrid tea roses." She laughed, a light, tinkling sound.
I just stared, my smile frozen on my face. Purpose? Destiny? Who talked like that about roses? And that look in her eyes. It was gone now, of course, just like Liam's line had been. What the hell was that? My mind churned, trying to make sense of it. Maybe she was just old, had a momentary senior moment. Or perhaps I was just overthinking everything. This whole transmigrating into a novel thing was enough to make anyone a little jumpy. I just had to keep calm. The following morning, I went to the kitchen early, needing coffee. My head was still a little fuzzy, haunted by the oddness of the night before. I watched the water boil, the steam curling.
The kitchen was bright, warm, smelling of brewing coffee. Normal. This was good. I needed normal. My gaze drifted to the old wall clock above the stove. It was a charming antique, but it had stopped ticking last week, stuck at 5:15. My maid, Agnes, had repeatedly forgotten to change the batteries. No big deal, I thought. Just another small detail to fix later. I poured myself a mug, the warmth seeping into my hands. Then I looked at the clock again. The minute hand gave a tiny, almost imperceptible jerk, just a millimeter. It should have been impossible. I set my mug down, walked over, and reached out a hand. My fingers brushed the cold brass frame. Nothing. It wasn't moving. I even gently tried to wiggle the minute hand, but it was stiff, fixed in place, just as it had been. Maybe it was the light playing tricks. My eyes were still adjusting to the morning sun. I turned back to my coffee, my back to the clock, and then I heard it. A soft, tiny click. It wasn't loud, but in the quiet morning kitchen, it felt like a gunshot. I spun around. The minute hand. It was no longer at 5:15. It was now at 5:27. And as I watched, heart drumming against my ribs, it gave another delicate, almost silent tick, shifting another millimeter forward. It was running, slowly, jerkily, but it was running. My throat suddenly went dry. I swallowed hard, a painful, rasping sound in the sudden silence of the kitchen. My coffee sat there, steaming. I couldn't tear my eyes away from that clock. It was impossible. It had been broken. It was still broken. But it was moving. I stood there for a long moment, just staring. My mind scrambled for a logical explanation. A faulty mechanism, maybe? Sometimes old clocks did that, or so I'd heard. A delayed reaction from Agnes trying to fix it? No, she hadn't touched it. I told myself it was just old, a quirk, a rare, unsettling quirk. But inside, a cold, tiny knot of fear began to form. I decided I needed to get out, clear my head. And besides, I needed to make a record of these things. Journaling them, that was the logical step. I'd try to avoid Liam for a few days, too. See if these glitches lessened without my direct interference in the plot. Just an experiment, I told myself, a purely scientific experiment. So I drove into town, ostensibly to run errands. I ended up browsing a boutique, trying to keep my mind on things I could control. The smell of fresh linen and expensive perfume filled the air. Martha, the saleswoman, was a kindly older woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. I'd always enjoyed our chats. "Ah, Miss Evans, back so soon?" Martha's smile was warm, crinkling the corners of her eyes. "I was just thinking about you.
Saw that lovely red gown at the charity gala last week. It suited you perfectly. Positively radiant you were. Like a real future Mrs. Thorne." She chuckled, a soft, friendly sound. I felt a sudden coldness seep into my bones. Red gown? Future Mrs. Thorne? I had worn a periwinkle blue dress, not red, not even close. And I certainly hadn't told Martha, or anyone really, about any aspirations to be Mrs. Thorne. The whole clinging was a secret strategy, not a public declaration. "Oh, Martha," I said, trying to keep my voice light, to infuse it with a touch of polite correction. "You must be mistaken. I wore blue, that lovely periwinkle one I bought here last month. And as for Mr. Thorne—" Martha waved a hand, still smiling. "Nonsense, dear. Everyone was talking about that magnificent red dress, bright as a poppy. And as for Mr. Thorne, well, it's only a matter of time, isn't it? Such a handsome couple you make, perfectly destined." Her gaze was entirely pleasant, entirely without malice. She genuinely believed what she was saying. Her correction just slid off her, like water off a duck's back. I couldn't make her see. Her memory, it had been rewritten, just like that. In her mind, I had worn red. In her mind, I was already on the path to becoming Mrs. Thorne. And the word destined, it echoed. Destiny. Mrs. Henderson's silly remark about roses. Liam's line. My palms felt clammy. My heart was starting to pound a little harder, a little faster. It wasn't a quirk. It wasn't fatigue. This was something else. My throat felt tight. I paid for a silk scarf, my hands fumbling with the purse clasp, eager to get away.
Martha continued to beam at me, wishing me a pleasant day, completely oblivious to the cold, creeping dread that was now consuming me. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My car felt like a sanctuary, a small steel bubble against whatever was happening. I turned the radio on, needing noise, needing distraction. A soft jazz tune filled the car. It was familiar, comforting. Then, halfway through a piano solo, the music cut out, abruptly. Not a fade, but a sudden, dead stop. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, pressing in on me. I thought the radio had broken. But then, a voice, completely devoid of inflection, a flat, mechanical monotone, filled the space. It wasn't coming from the speakers, not quite. It was everywhere, inside my head, all around me, like the air itself was speaking. "Kik band dang chait sai," the voice rasped, cold and emotionless. "Nyan verd ful Catherine Evans controlite dung tween." My breath hitched. I slammed my hand onto the radio dial, twisting it violently to the off position. The jazz music immediately resumed, exactly where it had left off, as if nothing had happened, as if it had never been interrupted. My hand was shaking. I stared at the radio, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I touched the cold, hard plastic of the knob where I'd just turned it. Nothing. It looked fine. It sounded fine. But then, in the tiny digital display, almost imperceptible, I saw it. A thread-thin, vertical scratch, like a glitch on a screen, running from top to bottom. It hadn't been there before. My hands were freezing. My skin felt clammy. I just knew, that voice had been real, and it had been talking to me,
directly to me. The script is running wrong, so it knew. It knew I was here. It knew what I was doing. My previous excuses, my rationalizations, they shattered like glass. This wasn't some random anomaly. This was a targeted attack. I floored the gas pedal, gripping the wheel, needing to get home, to safety, to my room. I needed to write this down, all of it, before it vanished too, before it changed. When I finally pulled into the driveway, my whole body was tense. I practically ran inside, up the stairs, and into my room. I felt watched, a prickling sensation on my neck, as if an invisible glare was burning into my back. I locked the door, leaning against it for a moment, head against the cool wood. My gaze fell on my desk, my journal. It was there, open to a fresh page, just as I'd left it. I walked over, my legs feeling heavy, and sat down. My heart was still hammering. I remembered clearly what I had written in there. Weeks of planning, notes on Liam, strategies to avoid the original plot points, my determination to survive. But as my eyes scanned the page, a wave of nausea washed over me. The lines, they were different. The handwriting was mine, unmistakably mine. But the words, they twisted my stomach. It wasn't about avoiding death. It wasn't about a careful strategy. His name, Liam Thorne, it started, clear and precise, in my own looping script. He is the key, the instrument, the one who will elevate me to my rightful place. The silly ingenue Iris will be easy to dispatch, a mere obstacle. I will ensure her downfall, just as the narrative dictates. And then he will be mine. It went on, detailing a plan to subtly undermine Iris, to manipulate Liam's affections, to isolate her. All the villainous strategies from the book. Strategies I had consciously, painstakingly avoided. My breath caught. I scrolled down. The bottom of the page, the last sentence, cut deep, a wound straight to my core. Then Liam Thorne will be mine. I stared at it, frozen. My memory, my journal, rewritten, in my own hand. This wasn't just the world outside changing. This was my own mind, my own past, my own thoughts, being invaded, twisted. I felt a scream building in my chest, but it was trapped there, unable to escape. I needed to find something real, something undeniably my past. My eyes darted around the room, landing on a small, dusty bookshelf in the corner. Among the ornate leather-bound volumes, there it was, my old fairy tale book, a worn, faded copy of Tales from the Whispering Woods. I'd read it countless times as a child. I knew every story, every happy ending, every brave prince and clever princess. I snatched it off the shelf, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it.
I flipped through the pages, desperate for familiarity, for innocence. The stories were all there. The Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Rapunzel. But as I read the endings, my blood ran cold. Sleeping Beauty awoke, not to a kiss, but to find herself trapped in an endless slumber, her prince having been turned to stone trying to reach her. Cinderella's glass slipper shattered, her true identity mocked, and she was forced into servitude forever, while the prince, heartbroken, chose to end his own life rather than rule alone. Rapunzel's hair withered, her escape route destroyed, leaving her to weep in the tower until her sight faded completely and she starved. Every story, every beloved story, twisted into something horrific. I could feel the bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just a glitch. This wasn't an accident. This was malicious. Lost in the nightmare of altered endings, my fingers brushed against something thin, delicate, tucked between the pages of Rapunzel. A small piece of cream-colored stationery. With a profound sense of doom, I pulled it out. The handwriting, again, mine, neatly penned in familiar loops and flourishes. Moi co-chuyent deo ka katok, nai hong thay tronch trine sopen. Every story has an end. You cannot escape fate. The paper slipped from my numb fingers, fluttering to the floor. My world was collapsing. My mind was breaking. This wasn't just a story altering. It was actively hunting me, erasing me, rebuilding my past, my intentions, my very identity. I pressed my hands against my temples, trying to force the thoughts away, the terror away. My confident facade had shattered. My relief was a cruel joke. I was surrounded, isolated. A sense of being watched was so heavy it felt material, pressing down on me. I somehow made it to bed, the room now a suffocating prison. Every shadow seemed to writhe. Every creak of the old house was a warning. I pulled the heavy comforter up to my chin, eyes wide, staring into the oppressive darkness. I squeezed them shut, trying to find a corner of my mind that was still safe, still mine. But in the velvety blackness, a voice, not outside, not the mechanical rasp from the radio, but a whisper that seemed to emanate from the very core of my being, from a place that felt impossibly ancient and cold, curled around my thoughts. "The villainess's death," it whispered, reverberating through my head, 1,000 tiny echoes. A wave of profound coldness washed over me, a shudder running down my spine as if something unseen had just glided past the foot of my bed. I snapped my eyes open, gasping for air, staring wild-eyed into the black. Nothing, only the inky darkness. But the cold remained, an icy grip on my chest, and the whisper, it lingered, a chilling prophecy now etched into the terrified silence of my mind. The whisper from the darkness, the villainess's death. It had rooted itself deep in my skull, a cold weight pressing against my brain. The deadly thigh cling. I didn't sleep at all, just lay there, eyes wide open, imagining shadows moving, listening to the old house creak and groan around me. Every little sound was a monster, every dark corner hid something about to lunge. The next morning, the exhaustion was like a heavy blanket. I just needed to try, one more time. To talk, to explain, to find some shred of sanity outside this escalating nightmare. My mother, she was always sensible, pragmatic. Maybe she'll see it. I spent a good hour trying to calm myself, really. Practicing what I'd say, trying to make it sound normal, not like a crazy person. I picked up the phone. My hand felt strangely heavy, almost numb, as I dialed her number. "Mom," I started, trying to keep my voice steady, even. Something really strange is happening. I think my memories are getting messed up, and everyone else's too. Like, they think I wore a red dress to the gala, but I swear I wore blue. And my journal, Mom, it's changed.
It's writing things I would never, ever think." There was a pause on the other end, a little too long. I heard her sigh, a soft, weary sound. "Catherine, darling," she said, her voice gentle, but it had a strange edge to it, a kind of pre-programmed patience. "Are you feeling quite all right? You sound a little distressed. You've always been so particular about your plans, so determined, and that red dress, it suited you so well." My stomach clenched.
No, Mom, really, I didn't wear red. And my plans were to avoid being the villainess, I swear. Things are just twisting. Like the clock, it started ticking on its own. And Liam said— She chuckled then, a small, dismissive sound. "Catherine, stop joking, dear. You've always been the cruel Miss Evans, haven't you? With your sharp wit and your even sharper ambitions. That's just who you are. Why are you telling such strange stories all of a sudden? Sounds like you just need a good rest, maybe a vacation. Or perhaps you're just getting cold feet about Liam. Don't tell me you're reconsidering your perfectly laid plans to secure him." Her laughter was light, but it sliced through me like ice. She didn't hear me. She couldn't hear me. The words just bounced off her. Or maybe they never even reached her. It was like I was speaking a different language. My own mother believed I was the villainess. Always had been. The truth, my truth, just wasn't available. I hung up, slowly, my finger hovering over the end call button like it might bite me. My hands were shaking. I had to stop. Stop trying to talk. Stop trying to explain. It was useless. Worse than useless. It just made them think I was cracking up. And maybe I was. I felt so cut off. So terribly, utterly alone. I curled up on my bed, pulling my knees to my chest. The world outside, my world, it was dissolving, and there was nothing I could do. I tried to just stay still, to be quiet, to disappear into my room. Maybe if I just stopped trying to change things, it would stop too. I tried to avoid everyone, just stay in my room, ordering food, reading old books, the normal ones, the ones I knew inside and out, double-checking every word for alterations. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, this checking of my own memories against print. Slowly, a few days blurred into each other. I just existed. Then, one morning, I woke up with a jolt. The sun was streaming fiercely through my window. I felt disoriented. My head felt heavy, like I'd been drugged. I blinked, trying to clear the fog. What time was it? My antique clock on the wall was still ticking, I noticed, its minute hand now at a different, impossible position. But more pressing, I heard voices from downstairs, loud, my parents, and others. They sounded angry. I dragged myself out of bed, my limbs feeling like lead weights, and stumbled down the stairs. My family was in the dining room, sitting around the polished mahogany table. My mother, my father, and a couple whose faces I vaguely recognized from various social events. Mr. and Mrs. Albright, I think. They weren't smiling. My parents looked at me, their faces grim, a collective frown. "Catherine," my father said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "Do you have any idea what time it is, and where you've been?" I blinked again, trying to grasp what was happening. I was in my room. I think I overslept. What's wrong?" My mother just shook her head, a look of profound disappointment on her face. "You skipped the family meeting, Catherine, the one we told you about last night, the one with the Albrights." She gestured towards the couple, who were now staring at her with a mixture of disdain and fear. "And then you had the audacity to insult Mrs. Albright, called her a meddling old hag, and threatened to ruin her family's reputation if she ever spoke ill of you again." My mouth fell open. What? No, I didn't. I wouldn't say that. My mind was completely blank. I had no memory of a family meeting, no memory of the Albrights being here yesterday, nothing. The past night was just gone, a black hole. Mrs. Albright visibly recoiled, clutching her husband's arm. She did, Mr. Evans, right to my face. And she said she would make sure her fiancé, Mr. Thorne, heard about my insubordination. Her fiancé? Mr. Thorne? My head was spinning. This was insane. All of it. They genuinely believed it. Every word. My parents, their friends, everyone. My home. The place where I was supposed to be safe. It wasn't safe. It was part of it. A stage. A complicit echo of the monstrous script. My voice was trapped. I couldn't argue. They wouldn't listen. They couldn't listen. The feeling of being watched, it sharpened. It had been diffuse before, a prickle on my neck. Now it felt like two pinpricks right into my eyeballs, from nowhere and everywhere. I felt like a puppet, my strings being tightened, pulled. I needed to understand. I needed to know why. And the only person who seemed to be at the center of all this, the anchor or the trigger, was Liam. I had to face him. My legs felt heavy, but I walked out of the house. I got into my car without a word, drove straight to the Thorne estate. It was a huge place, Liam's home, far too grand for a simple visitor. The gates were open, which was odd. Usually there was a guard. Today, nothing. The drive up the gravel path felt like a descent into something I didn't want to name. I parked and walked to the front door. It, too, was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, my heart thudding a frantic, uneven rhythm. "Liam?" I called out, my voice sounding small and reedy in the enormous, echoing foyer. No answer. I walked further inside, through grand halls and richly furnished rooms, each one feeling emptier than the last. The air itself felt thin, stretched, like a veil about to tear. I found him eventually, in what looked like a study, or maybe a sunroom. It was an enormous room, mostly empty, with tall windows looking out onto a perfectly manicured garden. Liam was standing there, his back to me, staring out one of the windows. He looked exactly as he always did, tall, broad-shouldered. But something was off. The way he stood, too still, too perfect, like a statue holding a pose. I hesitated at the threshold, my breath catching in my throat. I saw his reflection in the glass, perfectly clear. And then, for a split second, I saw my own. But it wasn't me, not really. The Catherine in the reflection was turned away from Liam, facing me. Her lips were moving, soundlessly. But I knew the words. I saw them, etched into the air around her reflexed face, like bright blue text, the same shimmering error I'd seen before. And she was mouthing, "Iris will be easy to dispatch. He will be mine. I will ensure her downfall, just as the narrative dictates." My reflection, saying words from my rewritten journal, the villainess's cruel monologues. My stomach lurched. I put a hand over my mouth, a gasp escaping me. Was that what I was truly thinking, or what I was forced to think? Liam turned then, slowly, gracefully. His eyes, those startling blue eyes I remembered, locked onto mine. But they weren't the eyes of the man I knew, or thought I knew. There was no warmth, no concern, only a cold, knowing depth.
not the empty puppet look from our date. This was different. This was control, understanding, almost complicity. "Welcome back, Catherine," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. It held no emotion, no intonation I could recognize as truly him. It was just a sound, perfectly articulated, yet utterly devoid of life. The blood drained from my face. My legs felt like they might give out from under me. The script needs to be completed. He knew. He was part of it. He was. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. I wanted to run, wanted to scream, but my body wouldn't obey. It felt heavy, unresponsive. Then I felt a pull. A powerful, invisible force, like a giant hand, grabbed me, dragging me forward. My feet slid on the polished floor. I couldn't resist. I was moving, being pulled towards Liam. And then, just like that, I was pressed against him. My arms, completely against my will, wrapped around his waist. My head pressed against his chest. It wasn't a romantic embrace. It was a vice, a trap, a forced, sickening display. I couldn't move, couldn't pull away. His body was rigid beneath my forced embrace. He didn't hug me back, just held perfectly still, his eyes still fixed on nothing. And then, from deep within my skull, the same mechanical, emotionless voice from the radio, the one that had twisted my journal and my fairy tales, reverberated. So close, so intimate. It felt like it was coming from inside me. The deadly thigh cling. A wave of emptiness, cold and vast, washed over me. My body felt hollow. Liam released me, abruptly. I stumbled backward, my legs barely holding me. My vision swam. When I looked up, Liam was gone. The empty room was gone. I was somewhere else. A small room, gray walls, no windows. Just a single old, worn bed in the middle. The air was thick, with a strange, musty smell, like stale paper, and something else, something metallic. My heart was a frozen lump in my chest. My mind felt gone. I found myself stumbling to the bed. On the thin, lumpy mattress lay a drawing.
A meticulously detailed drawing in stark, unforgiving charcoal. It was a picture of her, Catherine Evans, the villainess, and she was embracing Liam, eyes wide, a forced, manic smile on her face. Her arms were wrapped around his waist, a possessive, clinging gesture. My deadly thigh cling. Underneath the drawing, scrawled in a bold, almost violent hand, were 3 words. Get Cook Daduk Dick Son. The end is predetermined. My fingers, cold and numb, reached out. I touched the paper. It wasn't dry. There was a faint, sticky dampness. A trace of red. Not paint, not ink. It smelled like copper, like old, congealed blood. My blood, or her blood, or the blood of every version of Catherine Evans who had ever tried to escape the script. My world wasn't just collapsing, it was pulverizing me, and there was nowhere left to run. I woke up, again. The room, familiar, too familiar. The soft morning light, exactly the same angle, exactly the same dust motes dancing in the air. This was it. This was the room, The very first scene, the one I'd read countless times in the novel. My room. Catherine Evans' room. I stood up, my legs heavy, like walking through water. I looked in the mirror, my face, still mine, but not. It was the face of Catherine Evans, sharp cheekbones, eyes a little too intense, a faint, almost imperceptible curl of a smirk that wasn't mine. I moved my head. My reflection moved. But just for a second, it felt like it paused. A tiny delay. Like a poorly synced video feed. A glitch. God, I hated that word. I walked over to the ancient rug by my bed, the one with the faded floral pattern. I always hated this rug. Too Victorian. I stooped down, pretending to adjust it, and my fingers found it. A tiny crack in the wooden floorboards underneath. Just a thin line, barely visible. It wasn't there before. Or was it? My memory, it was hard to trust now. I traced the crack with my finger, cold wood against colder skin. It felt like a nerve in the world, exposed. I pulled myself up. I just needed to get through this day, this loop. Try to avoid everything, every interaction, every pre-written line. I focused on remembering my actual life, my small apartment back home, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the sound of traffic on the city streets. Details, small, meaningless details, but they were mine. I clung to them, like tiny anchors in a rising tide. But then I tried to get dressed. My hands reached for a simple, practical dress, my favorite one, white linen. But my fingers, on their own, moved away. They went instead to a deep green silk down, the kind of dress Miss Evans would wear, flashy, expensive, and oh God, just as I looked at it, a thought, cold and not mine, pierced through my head. Perfect for making that hussy iris seethe. I shuddered. No, no, that wasn't me. I tried to pull my hand back, but it wouldn't move. It was like a dead weight. My fingers, they just kept going. They unbuttoned the green dress. I could feel the silk against my skin. It was happening. Again. Later, I was at breakfast. The same sterile, massive dining room. My parents, their faces fixed in their familiar expressions of polite, distant approval. I looked at the bowl of cereal in front of me. Of course, it always was. I picked up the milk carton, the heavy ceramic one. I poured. The milk, fresh and white, came out slow, so slow, like it was fighting me. It wasn't thick, not spoiled. It looked perfectly normal. But the flow, it was like pouring spoiled honey, heavy, resistant. I tilted the carton more, but nothing changed. It just streamed out, sluggish and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. As if I had all the time in the world. Which, I guess, I did. A horrifying amount of it. I touched the carton, ceramic, cold, normal. But the milk kept pouring, just that slow, unwavering trickle. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the milk. I closed my eyes for a second, just to reset, to try and force the world back into line. I tried to remember a specific childhood memory, the smell of my grandmother's baking, cinnamon and apples, a safe memory. But then, as I held on to it, a detail twisted. My grandmother's smile, gentle, it suddenly elongated. Her teeth looked too sharp. And a voice, not hers, whispering, "You were always a mistake, Catherine."
I recoiled. No, that never happened. My grandma loved me. She did. I know she did.
But the memory, it felt real. It felt like that's how it had always been. My mind, my own fortress. It was being breached, infected. This time, I ran. I just ran, out of the house, into the woods behind the estate. I needed to escape, needed to find some place the loop couldn't reach, some wild, untamed corner. I ran and ran. The air turned colder as I pushed deeper into the trees. My lungs burned, my legs ached. But the trees, they never changed. The same dense canopy overhead. The same path, twisting and turning, but always looking identical to the last bend I'd passed. I saw the same gnarled oak tree, the same patch of ferns. Over and over. I was running, but I wasn't going anywhere. It was like running on a treadmill, an endless, mocking exertion. I finally collapsed, gasping for breath, my hands sinking into the damp forest floor. My head was spinning. Everything was meaningless, just futile. Then I heard it, a whisper, from the ground, from the roots of the trees, all around me. Not a distinct voice, more like a vibration, a rumbling deep in the earth. Like the ground itself was muttering. "You cannot escape," it said. And then, louder, sharper, "The villainess always meets her end." Panic flared. A desperate, animal urge to just get away. I saw a half-rotted tree trunk leaning precariously. I reached for it, scrabbling to climb, to find higher ground, to get above the whispers. My fingers sank into the soft, decaying wood. I pulled myself up, one foot after the other, ignoring the splinters. I heard a crack, a loud, sharp crack. Then a tearing sound. The branch didn't just break, it seemed to burst, splinters flying. Something heavy struck my head. The world tilted. Then just black. I opened my eyes to the sound of flowing water. I was lying on my back next to a river. The sun, weak and watery, filtered through the leaves above. My head throbbed. I brought a hand up. My fingers came away sticky with something wet and warm. Blood, of course. I sat up, slowly, pain shooting through my skull. Liam. He was standing over me. His golden hair seemed to glow in the diffused light. That smile. It was perfect, a little too perfect. Like it was painted on. "Catherine," he said, his voice smooth, gentle. "You always did insist on wandering off, didn't you? Getting into trouble?" He extended a hand. "Come on, let me help you up. It wouldn't do for the future Mrs. Thorne to be found bruised and muddied by the river's edge, now would it?" My blood ran cold. The future Mrs. Thorne. Fated lines. This was it. This was the scene. The one where he found her just before the big ball. The one that led to the twisted misunderstanding with the heroine. The one that ultimately sealed Catherine's doom. I had tried to outrun it. I had run for what felt like hours, only to be knocked out and delivered straight back into its waiting arms. The harder I fought, the tighter the noose got. The universe, or whatever the hell this thing was, it wanted me to play my part. It was going to drag me, kicking and screaming, through every single beat of this awful story. I stopped fighting.
I just stopped. I raised my head, looked at Liam, his perfect, unblinking smile. I took his hand. His skin was cold, smooth, like polished marble. It was a strange thought. The deadly thigh cling. I must have reenacted that scene 100 times now, 1,000 times. Each time it was the same, and each time it was worse. The feeling of my arms, my traitorous, disobedient arms, wrapping around his waist. My head pressing against his chest. Hearing nothing, feeling nothing, but the pain. The mental agony of being forced into that role, into that preordained gesture of desperate, pathetic villainy. That pain was becoming physical. It wasn't just my mind recoiling. My muscles would spasm. My teeth would ache. My blood would feel like ice. And after each forced embrace, each time Liam would release me, abrupt and uncaring, the world would twist, and I would be thrown into another, even more grotesque death. One time it was a fall, from a cliff, just like the book described, but it was higher, the rocks below sharper. I really felt it. The wind tearing at my face, the sickening lurch in my stomach, the impact, the pain, hot and searing, before everything went dark. I woke up, groaned. My head felt like it was split open. I was in a room, someone else's room, small, stark,